What's up, guys? It's JC. I'm actually bringing you some post commentary over The Last of Us Online, and I just wanted to bring a topic to the forefront. And the topic was actually brought up by my grandfather, believe it or not. We actually had a conversation about video games, and you already know, you already know from his perspective, his generation, and he's quite a few generations removed from mine and individuals that play video games. He did not grow up playing them, and he was well beyond his years once they were actually became popular. So he never touched them. He never tried them, never touched them. And his whole argument to me was about children today and how video games are basically not helping them to do much. I mean, do you know the arguments? It makes you lazy, and some people thinks it makes kids violent, and all types of trash. Like when you hear in the news somebody did something crazy and they always blame GTA for it. And I'm not saying there aren't crazy people out there, but that's like one in a million, maybe even one in so much more than a million. I don't know anybody that wants to go out and steal a car because of GTA. You were probably crazy enough to do that before you played it. But I digress. It wasn't an argument because I would never dare argue with my grandfather, but I just gave my input. And the first game that actually came to mind when I wanted to give my input was Final Fantasy VII. And here's why. I remember growing up, I've played video games ever since I can remember. I'm talking about the original Nintendo Entertainment System, Sega Genesis, and boy, once PlayStation came out, the original, I've owned every PlayStation thereafter. N64, even had the Wii for a little while. I'm a gamer, That's what gamers do. They play video games. But I brought up Final Fantasy VII because when we initially started talking, I said, Grandfather, let me just tell you my perspective. And I said, I played video games for as long as you can remember, as long as I can remember. And there's this one game that I began to play that was actually like an interactive novel or an interactive movie where I had to do so much reading that it just helped with my ability to read. A lot of these games, not only Final Fantasy, but that was the first game that came to my mind. A lot of RPGs or a lot of games in the 80s and 90s period. Zeldas, platformers even. You had to read. But it wasn't always voice acting. You had to read. Okay? And just think about this for a moment. If you've played any of the Final Fantasies, any RPG for that matter, Legend of Dragoon, Brave Fencer Musashi, even though that did have some voice acting, any RPG, any platformer where there was reading involved, but specifically RPGs, by the time you were done with those 3 discs in Final Fantasy VII, did you ever stop and think about how much you've actually read? Just think about that for a moment. By the time you were done with Final Fantasy VII in its entirety, and shame on you if you've never played it, but by the time you were done with it, you've read at least 2 books. Now, I'm not saying these are dictionary-sized books, but come on, at decent size, you've read a couple books, okay? And that's for any RPG within the 90s. So it really helped my reading comprehension and my reading skills. I mean, a lot of these games were rated T for teen, and I'm playing them when I'm like 8 years old, 9 years old. And never mind the violence, because that wasn't really what intrigued me. Yes, I enjoyed the battle system and everything that the game had to offer, but just reading this story and having it unfold and having an orchestra playing over the text to give you a type of somber mood, if there was a somber mood or a joyous mood, give you a mood to go along with the game because there was no voice acting, so they still had to set the tone. It just raised your cognitive thinking skills. It just raised the bar in a way that movies could not do it for me or for any gamer. This is why we are gamers. This is why we game. So I just had to let him know. Very respectfully, of course. He is my grandfather. But, I mean, think about how much video games have helped you. Think about them, okay? Just think about your favorite game. Think about that one game that turned you into a gamer. Because no one is born a gamer, okay? Everybody that is a gamer begins by just playing games. And it's usually at a very young age. Okay, yeah, you enjoy them when you're young, but there's always that one game that changed your life and turned you into a gamer. Okay, think about that one game. What did it do for you that made you want to continue this habit and made you love it and enjoy it and be passionate about it? Okay, I remember the Marios. I remember all of those games, but once I played Final Fantasy VII and I'm emotionally involved and feel emotionally attached, and I've grown with these characters over 3 discs, and I've read so much, and I've just learned so much from a video game. My reading comprehension was increasing. They were using words I've never even heard of before in the text. And what did I do? So I can fully understand the game to the fullest, I'd grab a dictionary and I'd look up these words. And I'd start practicing using these words in sentences till it made full sense to me. Okay? I mean, their cognitive thinking skills. It made me a better reader. And in turn, that made me a better writer. And my grades started to improve in school. Granted, as a child, you do need adult supervision to tell you when you've had enough video games, because you will get engulfed in them. You will totally lose your sense of time. You know, I used to be able to play, I could still do it. Let me not even front. But I could play a video game all day on the weekend. You know, obviously you need a parent to tell you when you've had enough. It can be addictive, but there's so much good that can come out of them. There's so much good that can come out of them. But by today's standards, there are many video games that get a lot more credit than they may deserve. You know, and I'm not going to say any names. We all know those video games that sell millions upon its first 24 hours of being released. And it's fun to play, but it lacks a lot of substance. There's no reading going on. And voice acting has taken over nowadays, so you don't have to really read anymore anyway. But you know video games still have subtitles. But forget the reading aspect, there's still so much to be learned. Hand-eye coordination, just your comprehension of the story and what's going on, how to control your character models. I know if you are a gamer, you've put a controller in the hands of someone who's not a gamer, that's in their teens or an adult. And what's the first thing they do? They struggle trying to control it. You know, it takes skills to be a true gamer. So you need to do this for me. Pat yourself on the back. If you're a true gamer, I'm not talking about those that just play a sports game once a year or the next Call of Duty. And I'm not bashing these franchises. I love these franchises. But I'm saying if you play video games like you've heard of The Last of Us, or you played a Final Fantasy, or you've enjoyed some of the original Halo games, the Metal Gear Solid series, Final Fantasy when it was still good. Did I say Final Fantasy already? It shows how much I love that game. Well, that series. Back in the day, not anymore. Let's make that clear. But it's just so much. Even today, Uncharted series, games like Infamous series, just so much, so much, so much. It's too much for me to even name. Red Dead Redemption, just so many games where the story can just take you away and whisk you away to being someone you never imagined being. We don't think of killing people when we're playing video games unless you were already crazy before you played. Okay, yes, video games can be violent. This was his main argument, but there's so much good that can come out of playing them. Some of the most intelligent people I know are gamers. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from anybody. from anybody. I'm sure anybody that watches this video can tell me something that came out of gaming for them that was positive. You meet some of your best friends gaming. You can have conversations about video games. And my whole argument is to the people that don't like video games, you like something. I know you probably like movies or reading a book. They can relate to one another in so many ways. So don't be biased against video games just because your generation never grew up playing them at all. Okay, every generation has something that intrigues them, that just brings them that much closer to a new medium of art, of entertainment, of pure enjoyment. I mean, come on. If you're playing in a competitive multiplayer game, you gotta have some type of skill to come out on top. And look at the teamwork that goes on in these games. Look at this video, for example, 4-on-4, very intimate game. You're not gonna win very many games if your team cannot work together in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I can't stop thinking about all the positive aspects that have come out of gaming. Problem solving skills. Did I say that? Think about a Zelda game that you've played. If it hasn't made you stop and think at one point in time of your next move, of what you have to do to get from point A to point B, or to earn that new weapon, or to get that boss key to open up that door to fight that boss, then what is video games doing for you? Maybe you're playing the wrong ones, or maybe you're not playing the right ones. But I do know this for a fact. That whole thought process about video games that a lot of older generations feel towards them, it's going to be phased out eventually, because as gamers, we're going to raise our children to be gamers. And they're going to raise their children to be gamers. It's going to overtake the movie industry one day. I bet you that. But anyway, tell me what your favorite game is, the game that turned you into a gamer. And don't forget to subscribe. This is JC, y'all. Peace.